Welcome back, friends. I'm EVON Davis, your traveling warrior astrologer, and today I'm going to be talking about the May full moon with the moon in Scorpio and the sun in Taurus conjunct Uranus and the fixed star Algol. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the chart and I will tell you what it's all about. Okay, so this full moon happens on May 12th at 10:56 a.m. in Colorado Mountain Time, basically. So you can calculate for your time zone. In other words, it's pretty much in the morning or around the afternoon, early afternoon in the United States, in North America. So if you're somewhere other than that, please calculate for your time zone. I have to admit that this full moon is probably going to be relatively challenging. So what I want to do is start with just the basics. A full moon indicates endings, completion, fruition. It's sort of like the end of a pregnancy when the birth process completes. Because think about that full moon. Something has come to fullness, something has come to completion, fruition. We're ready to, in a sense, give birth to it, or just that sense of completion or ending. That doesn't mean that it has to be the absolute end. There's nothing after it. It can be something like completing a project, but there may still be other aspects, like maybe you've completed a book, but you still need to get it published. So it can be something like that. The other way that full moons express themselves is as an illumination, such as something from your subconscious or a secret coming to light. It's an illumination or a revelation, something coming out of the dark depths of your subconscious or out of a space where it was hidden, like secrets, information that was not known before. And so there's this illumination and these revelations revealing something that had been hidden before and making it visible, illuminating it in this light. So it is very subconscious. Sometimes something from your subconscious comes up into your conscious mind and it's illuminated. There's a revelation. Sometimes it can also be secrets, like other people's secrets or information you didn't know before, and now it's being revealed to you. It's becoming visible to you. Or your secrets that were hidden could become visible to other people. And I have found over the years that even though I know this, I have Scorpio in my 12th house. So when I have a full moon there, I do find sometimes I reveal secrets that I did not intend to reveal, even though I know all about the full moon in my 12th house Scorpio and how that can be the revelation of secrets. And I've done it more than once. I was like, oh, I can't tell anyone that. That's a secret. And then next thing I know, I'm telling everybody without even being aware, like in the moment that I'm doing it. And I'm like, oops. So it does happen. Now, the other side of this full moon is the sun, which is at 22 degrees of Taurus, 13 minutes, and it's conjunct Uranus and Algol. So we have to talk about what that conjunction means and how it changes this full moon. Basically, it's like an exaggeration. With the sun conjunct Uranus over the fixed star Algol, which is the decapitated king or leader, Uranus is shocks, surprises, lightning bolts, eruptions like volcanic eruptions, destabilization, earthquakes, tsunamis. It's explosive. It's disruptive to our external reality, but also to our emotions. Like a person can have an emotional eruption. So a person can be emotionally explosive. They can blow up and it can bring arguments in a relationship. Also, we will probably see this out in the world. We'll probably see shocking behavior, shocking words, irrational behavior. And, we can see that on the world stage, people who are politicians or leaders of countries, leaders like CEOs of corporations. I would say that we're probably going to see many, many examples of that. Scandals and just like the last straw. So we've seen some things happening here in the United States politically with scandals and revelations and many things happening in the government that are unconstitutional or clearly illegal or a threat to national security. You could give so many examples of that. And in fact, a lot of what has been happening since the beginning of the year, the beginning of this particular term, the stated goals have not been met, not at all. Some of them have, but in very shady ways, and others have not been met at all. And in fact, in many ways, the opposite has occurred, and there have been many scandals already. And I think that certain people are going to reach the end of their straw, and that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and something's going to happen. So again, we'll probably see shocking behavior, shocking words, and irrational behavior, and people just reaching the end of their rope and exploding. So in this kind of energy, sometimes you'll see either outright aggression or an expression of passive aggression because of the fact that it's something that's been building up and it just explodes. So people can be overly emotional, blowing things out of proportion, and very emotionally reactive. Of course, it's going to differ based on your particular natal birth chart and how it's aspecting your natal planets or points in your chart. So this is true, especially if it's making a conjunction to a natal planet, an opposition, or a square. Now, the squares would be in either Leo or Aquarius. So there is a person very much at the helm of the United States who has his midheaven right where this Sun conjunction to Uranus conjunction to Algol is right over his midheaven and square to his ascendant and natal Mars. So I would expect to see something involving that person that would be very shocking. I've given up on trying to make predictions because everything is shocking every day. So, how could it be any different, I guess? Now, there's something else in this chart that we also need to look at because it's like this full moon by itself is challenging because the sun is conjunct Uranus, which means the full moon is opposite Uranus in Scorpio, and Scorpio has its own issues, so to speak. Scorpio can be very intense. And then, of course, the sun and Uranus are right on the fixed star Algol. So there's a lot of stuff going on just in this full moon that's pretty intense itself. But then on top of it, there is a T-square with Pluto square to Mercury. Pluto is at 3 degrees of Aquarius and Mercury is at 3 degrees of Taurus. So they're forming a square, but it's actually forming a T-square because Mars gets pulled back into the mix, even though it is separated from Pluto by around 8-degree orb, which normally probably wouldn't be so much of a problem, but the fact that this full moon is in Scorpio and it's so kind of like a tinderbox itself, and Scorpio is the ruler of both Mars and Pluto. So when we see those two planets still in an 8-degree opposition, but also squared by Mercury in Taurus, it's like it's pulling that Mars back into the opposition to Pluto. It's reactivating that opposition. And then one more thing, which is that the ascendant is at 3 degrees Leo, which means that Mars is on the ascendant. Mars is on an angle. When a planet is on an angle, that makes it more intense. And the ascendant is probably the most intense of the 4 angles. So Mars being on the ascendant means that that energy is magnified. So we can't discount Mars, even though it's got this 8-degree orb in its opposition to Pluto. It's like it's just that energy is just being pulled right in, reactivated by the T-square by the fact that the full moon is in Scorpio, ruled by Mars and Pluto, and by the fact that Mars is on the ascendant, magnifying its energy. So that's getting reactivated. So basically, everything about this full moon is very intense and very triggering. And I expect that we will see some crazy stuff happening in the world, especially with leaders. We may see some increase of hostilities and conflicts around the world. We may see them getting escalated. And so that's on the world stage. And possibly, it's caused by the ongoing conflicts, but it's also caused by a lot of the flagrantly incendiary language that certain people are using, and also by the tensions created by economic instability and insecurity, because we don't really know how things are going to go. I think a lot of people are making guesses, and I would probably make the same prediction that we're probably headed for stagflation, which is the worst. It's when inflation gets worse, and at the same time, we're in a recession, meaning that the GDP is not growing. In fact, it's probably shrinking, which means fewer products, less supply, fewer jobs, less money flowing in the economy, and yet at the same time, inflation. Because if there are supply shocks, if there are limited supplies, the price is going to go up. It's just the way it works in this kind of economy. So I think we're going to see both inflation, increasing inflation, and also recession. So I just wanted to mention on a personal note that I'm moving to the cabin soon. In fact, today's Thursday when I'm making this video, and I expect to head to the cabin on Saturday, and I'll be there all summer. So basically into the fall, like late September, early October timeframe. And I go there every year, so people who've been watching me for years know that. And it's a remote cabin in the mountains where I'm renovating and homesteading by myself. And so I want to share my adventures with you while I'm there. So I expect, and I want you to expect, that on this channel, I will be sharing what I'm doing there, like in terms of how I'm renovating the cabin, what it's like to live there, why I live there, because the why I think is super important to understand the how. In other words, why am I building this cabin by myself, like a DIY? Why do I want to homestead? Why do I want to live so far away from civilization, getting away from it all of this crazy stuff, all of this digital reality? I'll continue to make videos, but very much talking about my life experience there, because I think it's really important. I think the remedy to so many of our problems today is to get grounded in a more physical reality, like learning to build your own home, learning to work the land, getting involved in a homestead or a community or eco-village or something like that, which I would like to actually expand one day after the cabin is finished and the homestead is, got its fundamental roots. Then I would really like to invite other people to come and stay, and maybe small cabins, and create an eco-village in a community, because I think it's important, because I think people need opportunities for things like that. And it doesn't necessarily mean anyone watching this channel is interested in that, but maybe you are. And regardless, I also want to talk about how we can live frugally, how we can save money and still have a good life, and prep for any problems that may come up in the future, because I think we are going to have problems, and I think we need to talk about how we're going to survive this. Okay. So, well, I'll continue to do my astrology because I love it, and that's what this channel is based in. But at the same time, I really want to bring this other information to you, because my feeling, as I've said before, is I don't want to just talk about the problems. I also want to talk about the solutions. So if that interests you, stick around, and probably my next video will be at the cabin, and I will do my astrology while I show you how I'm building the cabin and working the land and saving money, being frugal, and just figuring out how to make ends meet and how to survive all of this. So I hope you'll find it interesting and check out my next video. So I hope you enjoyed this and I hope it was helpful. And I look forward to seeing you again in the next video. Bye-bye.